SOC 2, or Service Organization Control 2, exists to give stakeholders confidence in how a service provider protects data and manages risks tied to information systems. It is an attestation, not a certification, meaning that an independent auditor evaluates and reports on how well a company's internal controls meet the trust services criteria, a set of principles focused on security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. The foundation of any SOC 2 report is the system description, a detailed narrative that defines what the organization does, what systems are included, and how those systems support commitments made to customers. This description acts as an anchor for the auditor's assessment. Many organizations misunderstand SOC 2 as a badge or label of compliance, but in truth, it is an evidence-based evaluation tied to a specific system during a defined period against defined criteria, not a perpetual certification. A key distinction learners must understand is that SOC 2 is an attestation rather than a certification. This means an independent CPA firm issues an opinion letter, not a pass or fail grade. The opinion reflects the auditor's professional judgment under AICPA standards, grounded in independence and objectivity. The auditor does not certify security, nor do they endorse the company's brand. Instead, they assess whether management's description and control assertions are fairly presented and whether the controls were suitably designed and operating effectively. Many misunderstand SOC reports as proof of flawless security or regulatory compliance, yet the report itself clarifies its boundaries and assumptions. Stakeholders, including customers, partners, and regulators, must interpret the findings with this nuance in mind. At the heart of every SOC 2 engagement lie the trust services criteria, 5 categories defining what trust in digital systems means in practice. These include security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. Each organization selects which categories apply to its systems based on business relevance and risk exposure. For example, a data analytics platform may include security, availability, and processing integrity, while a healthcare data processor may add confidentiality and privacy. The common criteria, CC series, apply universally, forming the baseline across all categories. Mapping organizational controls to these criteria creates alignment between what management promises and what auditors test. This mapping ensures the report remains transparent, comparable, and meaningful across industries. Defining system boundaries is one of the most critical scoping steps in SOC 2 preparation. Boundaries determine which services, systems, and components fall under the audit's lens. This includes infrastructure, applications, data flows, and supporting functions that directly affect the service commitments. Cloud dependencies and third-party vendors introduce shared responsibility, where some controls reside with external providers. These must be clearly documented, along with any carve-outs or subservice organizations excluded from testing. An accurate boundary ensures that evidence collection aligns with what auditors expect and prevents coverage gaps. A poorly defined system boundary can lead to misinterpretation, missed risks, or even a qualified opinion. SOC 2 offers 2 report types, each serving a distinct purpose. A Type 1 report evaluates the design and implementation of controls at a single point in time, useful for demonstrating readiness or for newer programs. A Type 2 report, on the other hand, examines operating effectiveness across a specified period, usually 6 to 12 months, providing greater assurance of consistency and reliability. Type 2 reports require mature documentation, monitoring, and remediation cycles. When gaps exist between reporting periods, organizations may issue bridge letters, short statements confirming no material changes since the last audit. Understanding these differences helps teams plan control testing, evidence gathering, and communication with customers. Different stakeholders derive different value from SOC 2 reports. Customers and procurement teams often request them as part of due diligence, using them to verify that vendors uphold appropriate safeguards. Regulators and partners may rely indirectly on SOC 2 findings to complement their own oversight. Internal leadership uses the results to gauge program maturity, operational discipline, and risk posture. For sales teams, SOC 2 reports can act as trust accelerators, shortening deal cycles by reducing the need for lengthy security questionnaires. However, this benefit only materializes when the organization understands how to position SOC 2 authentically, communicating strengths without exaggerating guarantees. Equally important is knowing what SOC 2 does not cover. A SOC 2 report is not a guarantee that systems are invulnerable or that operations will be uninterrupted. It is not a penetration test or vulnerability scan, and it does not prescribe a specific set of technical controls. Instead, it confirms that management's control framework meets the relevant trust services criteria. The report's assurance has boundaries. It should not be relied upon as proof of compliance with unrelated regulations or as a substitute for ongoing risk management. Third parties should interpret SOC 2 reports in context, understanding that effectiveness depends on scope, assumptions, and the shared responsibilities between provider and customer. Every SOC 2 engagement is governed by AICPA standards, specifically ATC 205, which outlines the rules for examination engagements. Under these standards, the auditor must remain independent and objective, gathering sufficient and appropriate evidence before forming an opinion. This process includes procedures such as sampling, inspection, and corroboration of management's claims. Evidence may include interviews, document reviews, system configurations, and transaction logs. Management, however, holds primary responsibility for designing, implementing, and maintaining the controls themselves. The auditor's role is to verify, not to build, operate, or improve the system. This clear division ensures the credibility of the attestation and the integrity of the SOC 2 ecosystem. The concept of control design and operation lies at the heart of SOC effectiveness. A well-designed control aligns with the organization's commitments and relevant criteria. For instance, an access review policy must not only exist, but must specify how, when, and by whom reviews occur. Operating effectiveness refers to whether the control is consistently executed over time. Documentation plays a vital role in both. Policies define expectations, while records and evidence demonstrate action. Assigning ownership ensures accountability, and continuous monitoring enables early detection of breakdowns. The interplay between design and operation distinguishes robust compliance programs from paper-only ones. Risk alignment drives every decision about which controls to implement and how rigorously to test them. A company handling sensitive customer data will select stronger safeguards than one offering a less critical service. Risk assessments identify threats, vulnerabilities, and potential impacts, translating them into prioritized controls. Commitments to customers, service level agreements, and regulatory requirements all influence this alignment. Mapping the trust services criteria to specific risk treatments clarifies intent and strengthens assurance. Even after controls are in place, some residual risk remains, bounded by management's assertion and the auditor's opinion. Understanding these boundaries prevents false confidence and encourages proactive improvement. An often overlooked concept is complementary user entity controls, QX. These are controls the customer, not the service provider, must implement for the system to remain effective. For example, a cloud provider may require that customers manage their own encryption keys or enforce strong authentication. The SOC 2 report outlines these expectations so that reliance is correctly placed. Contracts and customer documentation should align with these assumptions to avoid misunderstandings. If customers ignore or misunderstand QX, the effectiveness of the provider's controls can be compromised, even though the provider's report remains valid. Clear communication ensures shared accountability across all parties involved. Many organizations depend on subservice providers, such as data centers, payment processors, or cloud platforms. SOC 2 addresses this through inclusive or carve-out methods. In an inclusive approach, the subservice organization's controls are tested alongside the primary providers, creating a unified report. In a carve-out approach, those controls are excluded, but the dependencies and risks are still described in the system description. Regardless of method, organizations must maintain vendor oversight, collect evidence of their providers' assurances, and monitor performance. Transparency about subservice relationships builds trust and prevents confusion about who is responsible for what, especially when incidents or outages occur. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. The security category serves as the foundation for every SO2 report. It is the only category that must always be included when any others are chosen, making it the baseline for all evaluations. The Common Criteria (CC) series provides a structured set of controls that cover governance, access control, change management, incident response, and risk assessment. Without this foundation, the other categories cannot function effectively because security forms the defensive barrier that enables availability, integrity, confidentiality, and privacy to exist meaningfully. In practice, the security category ensures the organization has an established security program, policies, monitoring, and accountability that demonstrate management's commitment to protecting systems from unauthorized access and misuse. Even organizations focused primarily on availability or privacy depend on these security criteria to maintain control credibility and resilience. The availability category focuses on whether systems operate reliably and consistently in line with service-level commitments. This involves planning for capacity, ensuring redundancy, and maintaining recoverability in case of failures. Availability connects directly to business continuity and disaster recovery planning, emphasizing readiness for disruption rather than mere uptime statistics. Monitoring tools, performance dashboards, and error budgets help measure operational health, while incident management processes demonstrate response discipline. Customers increasingly expect transparency when disruptions occur. Clear communications about causes, resolutions, and preventive steps reinforce trust. Availability is not about perfection, but about resilience, the ability to recover quickly and meet obligations despite challenges, ensuring users can depend on the service. Processing integrity deals with the reliability and accuracy of system operations, particularly those involving transaction handling or data transformations. The principle focuses on whether information is processed completely, correctly, and on time without unauthorized modification. This category is especially relevant for financial, logistics, and analytics systems where small errors can cascade into larger problems. Controls that support processing integrity include input validation, change management, and reconciliation routines that detect exceptions or anomalies. Effective logging ensures traceability, allowing organizations to reconstruct events if discrepancies arise. In many ways, processing integrity is the digital equivalent of quality control in manufacturing, ensuring what goes into the process emerges as expected and verifiable. Confidentiality addresses the protection of sensitive but non-personal information. This includes proprietary business data, intellectual property, or client-sensitive materials that require controlled handling. Confidentiality commitments are often embedded in contracts and non-disclosure agreements, requiring organizations to safeguard data through classification schemes, encryption, and retention limits. Secure disposal processes ensure information is irretrievably destroyed when no longer needed. Access restrictions, both technical and procedural, maintain appropriate segregation. Failure to manage confidentiality properly can lead to competitive harm or loss of customer confidence. In modern environments, encryption at rest and in transit, coupled with identity-based access controls, are the cornerstones of meeting these commitments consistently and defensibly. The privacy category focuses specifically on personal information and how it is collected, used, retained, and shared. It draws on global privacy principles like notice, choice, consent, and individual rights to access or delete data. SOC 2's privacy criteria align closely with laws such as GDPR and CCPA. But instead of prescribing rules, they evaluate whether a company follows its stated privacy commitments. Data minimization and purpose limitation ensure personal data is used only as necessary and with proper safeguards. Privacy incidents, such as unauthorized disclosures or consent violations, must be handled with defined remediation procedures. Together, these controls show that privacy protection is not an afterthought, but an integrated component of ethical business operations. The evidence philosophy behind SOC 2 is central to its credibility. Auditors rely on evidence that is both sufficient and appropriate to support their opinion. This means gathering samples that represent real operations, verifying completeness, and ensuring that documents cannot be easily fabricated or altered. Evidence types range from screenshots and configuration files to tickets, logs, and recorded approvals. The auditor tests not just existence, but also consistency across time and population. A strong evidence culture helps organizations maintain a chain of custody, where every artifact can be traced to its source. This discipline creates defensible assurance that withstands scrutiny from regulators, customers, and future auditors alike. Readiness assessments provide a safe proving ground before the actual audit begins. In this stage, organizations perform a gap analysis against the trust services criteria and their commitments, identifying where processes or documentation fall short. The team prioritizes remediation based on risk and visibility, focusing first on controls that directly affect customer trust. Assigning clear owners and timelines ensures accountability, while dry-run evidence collection tests whether the organization can produce proof efficiently. Readiness assessments often reveal gaps not only in control maturity, but in communication, ownership, and record-keeping. Addressing these issues early prevents costly delays once the formal attestation process starts. Communicating the results of a SOC 2 engagement requires discipline and care. Reports contain sensitive operational details, so their distribution must be controlled through non-disclosure agreements and trust portals. Organizations often create executive summaries to convey the essence of their SOC 2 achievement without exposing confidential data. Sales and marketing teams can use these summaries to support customer discussions, but must avoid implying certification or blanket compliance. A well-handled SOC 2 communication strategy signals transparency, maturity, and respect for confidentiality, turning an internal assurance exercise into a public demonstration of trustworthiness. SOC 2 failures rarely stem from a lack of controls, but from common pitfalls in execution. Overscoping or underscoping can leave critical areas uncovered or stretch resources thin. Distributed teams may apply policies inconsistently, leading to uneven control performance. Processes that exist only in documents but not in daily practice create gaps auditors quickly expose. Weak vendor oversight often undermines even well-designed programs if third-party risks are unmonitored. Recognizing these pitfalls helps organizations plan sustainable control environments that stand up to independent scrutiny year after year. SOC 2 is not a one-time milestone. It's a continuous improvement loop. Mature organizations measure control effectiveness through key risk indicators and lessons learned from incidents or audit findings. Each cycle of assessment should feed into a backlog for improvement, ensuring that security practices evolve alongside business and technology changes. New systems, features, or markets require reevaluating existing controls. When feedback is welcomed and acted upon, the organization demonstrates not just compliance, but culture, one that values accountability, learning, and resilience as ongoing disciplines rather than audit checkboxes. To remain relevant in a fast-changing environment, organizations must think about future-proofing their SOC 2 programs. Multi-cloud architectures introduce complexity in control ownership and evidence collection, requiring clear portability of security principles. Automation tools now streamline evidence gathering and monitoring, reducing audit fatigue. Meanwhile, evolving privacy regulations and emerging technologies, such as generative AI, pose new risks that traditional frameworks may not fully address. Proactively assessing these developments ensures that SOC 2 programs stay credible and forward-looking. A dynamic control environment, one that embraces change rather than resists it, is the hallmark of lasting trust. Ultimately, understanding SOC 2 means seeing it not as a compliance burden, but as a structured reflection of trust. It begins with defining purpose and boundaries, extends through evidence and execution, and culminates in meaningful transparency with stakeholders. The 5 trust services categories together create a holistic view of how systems remain secure, available, reliable, confidential, and respectful of privacy. SOC 2 readiness is not about perfection. It is about maturity, honesty, and continual progress. By embracing this mindset, organizations can transform a routine audit into a genuine story of accountability and assurance, one that strengthens both their security posture and their reputation for integrity.